Welcome everybody. It's good to see so many people here today. I think I can safely say something I said a few hours ago when I was introducing Ken Brissett, is that there were two of us standing up here, and really I'm the only one who needs an introduction. My name is Dennis Tucker. I'm the publisher of Whitman Publishing. So I've been a collector since I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I remember reading books by Ken Brissett, by Dave Bowers. I still have the first red book that I bought, and my career's been in corporate communications. I've been a collector since I was a kid, and I'm embarrassed to call my current position a job or work. It's something that I love. I feel very honored to work with people like Dave Bowers, and it's just the best job ever. But enough about me. Q. David Bowers, if it can be said that anyone does not need an introduction in numismatics, it's Dave Bowers. Award-winning author, researcher, famous auctioneer, coin dealer, very prolific, still very active, probably the most active researcher and writer in numismatics today. He has more than 50 books to his credit, and I think the longest running Coin World column, regular columnist for Paper Money magazine, etc., etc., etc. Research editor for the Guidebook of United States Coins. And Dave has been in the hobby for more than 50 years, if I'm not mistaken. He's met many of the big names. He's dealt with many of the big collections, handled many of the famous coins, if not all of the famous coins. I guess without further ado, I'll just say, here's Q. David Bowers, talking about some of the famous numismatics.
Thank you, Dennis. I don't know if I can live up to all that or not, but I appreciate the nice words. I like coins. I like rarities. I like common coins. Actually, I've been looking for a 209 Lincoln cent in circulation. Haven't found one yet. The common, the rare. But I also like coin people, and I always have. It's a pleasure to, some of you here in the audience I've known for a number of years. Have handled some of your collections actually, but true to numismatic form, you're still collecting. When you collect one thing and then sell it, then you maybe collect another thing. You don't lose your love for numismatics. When this program was suggested, I said, well, why don't I think of some people that the names are recognizable or semi-recognizable that I have met, and so I put together a little program of some people that were you may recognize by their name and who I knew personally. And start with the first one, see if this works. Okay. Now these pictures were gathered from the Numismatic Scrapbook magazine from various places. Some of them, one of them is from newspaper photos, some are from candid pictures from the family, so I did not make an attempt to take B. Max Mehl. This is the best picture I could find of him. It was a representative picture. Max Mehl, they always had a question how to pronounce his name. And so one day he settled it once and for all and said, we want to get you on my mailing list, M-E-H-L-I-N-G. But even today, if you go to a book dealer and say, do you have a catalog? They say, oh yeah, we have B. Max Mehl, like rhyming with Pell Mell or something, B. Max Mehl, but he didn't pronounce it that way. Max Mehl started in coins in 1903. 1900, I guess he said he started in coins. His first ad in the Numismatists was 1903. And he was interested in coin people. He was, let's say, a numismatist second, and this is with due credit, and a people person first. Another one of the people I'll be talking about is the same way, but Max Mehl loved people. He liked to go to conventions. He liked to shake hands. He liked to go on overseas cruises and write about his experiences. He was president of Rotary International at one time and was just very much of a people person. And he loved publicity. He made most of his money by selling something called the Star Rare Coin Encyclopedia, which you could buy for $1, and if you were real lucky, you'd find a 1913 nickel in pocket change. And the idea was to sell catalogs, which he did by the hundreds of thousands or the millions. But it was said that in the 1930s, when he had his own radio program, that traffic in some cities on streetcars was slowed down like 30–40%, while the conductor looked at nickels that people were giving as fares. So by the time that I became a collector, I became a collector in 1952 and a dealer, in quotes, a so-called dealer in 1953, a teenager, but I did run little ads and did buy and sell coins, so I was really a dealer, what they call a best pocket dealer. Max Mehl was sort of legendary proportions. The Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania Coin Club, where I used to go, I developed a reputation for liking things to read. I didn't have too much money, but I liked to read. So people would say, well, do you have, here's some old runs of the scrapbook, or here's some old runs of the Numismatists. Do you want them? Just like you might today say, well, I'm cleaning out a closet and I'm not going to read these again. So I got a lot of literature free of charge. Also, there was some interest in buying and selling like old catalogs. And the only auction catalog that had any value in the Wilkes-Barre Coin Club when people brought duplicates, and I already had one, was Max Mehl's William Forrester Dunham sale of 1941, which was worth $3 to $5 with the gilt cover. But a Stax catalog, a Numismatic Galleries catalog, they had no value whatsoever. Anyway, going fast forward to B. Max Mehl, I liked his advertising. I mean, he could probably sell a coin to the director of the mint, or a refrigerator to an Eskimo. And one day I got his catalog in about 1956. He had a little price for sale catalog, and it said, I have this and this fixed price, and he had 99S Indian cents, uncirculated, $10. And so they were worth more than that at the time. And so I decided to call up, it had a telephone number. I called up in Fort Worth, Texas, and I said, hi, I'm Dave Bowers. I'd like to order a coin, and how do I go about doing that? And this was in the twilight of his life. I don't think he had 85 employees like he used to have. He said, who's calling? Well, this is Dave Bowers. So just a minute. And then this guy comes in, hi, may I help you? And I said, yes, I'd like to speak to someone. Well, this is Max Mehl. And I said, what? So I said, well, I have your catalog here, and I didn't quite know what to say. It's sort of like being in the presence of, the Pope or something, or whatever. So I said, well, I like your catalog. I like your advertising. He said, well, I like your advertising too. I read it in the Scrapbook magazine. It reminds me of when I was a kid. And I don't know if that was the ultimate compliment or not. And he said, what can I help you with? And I said, well, I'd like to buy one of those 1909S Indian cents, a little fumble as he probably looks through it. Yes, how many do you want? And I said, well, take a number of them. He said, well, would you want like 5? And I don't remember the exact number. Yes, and he said, well, you have them, I'll send them out. He said, now I want to let you know they're worth $30 each now. Just to let you know. And I said, well, you don't have to sell me 5. Oh, no, I want to. But that was Max Mehl. And then I had dinner with him at one of the conventions. It was either Omaha in 1955 or Chicago in 56. With Abe Kosoff, who I'll be mentioning in a little bit, not to tell what's coming up. We had dinner with Abe Kosoff, Molly Kosoff, me, and B. Max Mehl, the 4 of us in a nice restaurant. And so I have a question box, as I always have. I love asking questions. I said, well, what about this? What about this? And so forth. And I said, you should write your biography, your autobiography. And he said, well, why don't you write it for me? And I hear the little kid. And I said, well, that's very flattering, and I might do that. I had never written anything. I might have written a catalog or two, but never a book. So anyway, that was the last time, the one and only time I saw him. Max Mehl was a very nice man. He was not high of stature. He was probably about this high, very slight of build. And I remember when you shook his hand, you shake someone's hand, and some people have what I call an iron grip or something. But B. Max Mehl is almost like he was wearing water-filled gloves or something. Very soft hand and soft, warm hands. I just remember odd things. and a ready smile. So that's my experience with Max Mehl. Next, there's another, there's a typical B. Max Mehl ad in the Numismatic scrapbook of the Numismatists, and that shows his picture. And he just month after month after month ran advertising, and he worked both sides of the street. He sold his Starware Coin Encyclopedia to the public who were looking for a fortune. At the same time, in branch 2 of his business, he dealt with established dealers buying, selling, and conducting auctions. So he really had 2 businesses in one, and both were done very successfully. He died in 1957 and was widely mourned. Okay, next. This is Emery May Holden, a young girl, who later became Emery May Holden Norweb, or Mr. and Mrs. Ambassador R. Henry Norweb. She was the Mrs. And she was born in Cincinnati, and her family, the Holden family, had whose real name started as Holland, Hollenden, but they shortened it to Holden. Owned the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and then later, you know, the media and all sorts of the hotel there and whatever. And as she grew up, she became known as like the grand dame of Cleveland society. But anyway, this is young Emery May Holden, and she started like most of us would like to start. She was about 11, 12 years old or so, and her father, Albert Fairchild Holden, collected coins, and his little daughter would help him with a copy of Crosby. This is Mrs. Norweb telling me this. Here's a copy of Crosby, here's a pine tree shilling, give it a Crosby number and a little tag. So here at age 12, she would look it up. Well, yes, the tree goes this way and so forth. That's Crosby so-and-so. Her father died when she was a young teenager. He passed away, and somehow or other the DNA of coin collecting was imprinted on her. So she became probably the world's most famous distaff setter or female numismatist. But she also was a lady of, a lady of inquiry and adventure in a way. She met R. Henry Norweb, who came from a family of British textile manufacturers, and I don't know what, her father no longer lived, but somehow or other, I guess she became very interested in R. Henry or whatever it was. To make a long story short, she ran off to Europe to see him against the family's wishes. She served in the ambulance corps during the World War, and anyway, she became Mrs. R. Henry Norweb. And R. Henry Norweb grew up in privileged class a bit, like the Garrett family, went into the ambassadorial service and was posted a number of different places as an ambassador. But Mrs. Norweb determined to collect United States coins, world coins, you name it. But she liked United States coins best, and she had 3 categories of coins. She had a grading system. A coin was circulated, uncirculated, or proof. And she keyed them. She either had, you know, it didn't make it fine or very fine or AU. And generally speaking, if she couldn't find an uncirculated one, she didn't have one. She didn't have to have everything. But she went on year after year after year buying coins, and of course she had an unlimited budget. So when I first met Mrs. Norweb, Mrs. Norweb, probably about 1954 or 5 at a convention, she was a lady by that time. Next slide is not too good, but it'll show you an Ambassador Norweb. I want to advance it. This is the young ambassador. There's R. Henry, and there is Emery May as an ambassador, lady ambassador. She had many ambassador stories, by the way. One of the things, to digress slightly, when you're an ambassador and you're posted at place X, like Portugal as an example, you know, people come in and they say, hey, you know, I'm from the United States, could I see the ambassador? So they went into a routine, and maybe all ambassadors do this. The ambassador will be here at 4 o'clock. And 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd have a little color guard. They'd have 2 or 3 people in uniform, and they would have a tea and cookies. And Ambassador Norweb would then come at 4 o'clock and shake everybody's hand and welcome them. And then he would disappear, and then his next appearance, you know, unless you were a king or something, was the next day. But that way they they could control their, control their social schedule a little bit. So that's what they did. But when I met Mrs. Norweb, when she came to a convention, we corresponded, and when I bought my 1894 S dime for $47,500 in 1957, they bought it from me for $6,000. But we corresponded, and she said, "Oh, come to visit me." And she had a place in Booth Bay Harbor, Maine, out on the ocean, summer place, and I went there. And anyway, she sort of liked me. I don't know why, but all the other the dealers, she would come to the convention like, "Whoops, alert! Can't talk to you, Mrs. Norweb's going to be here in a minute." And she was treated like, like I don't know what, not an unreal person, because she would come and say, "Yes, I want this," and buy it for $5,000 at a time when $500 was a lot. But she would accept no fooling around. She had a break with John J. Ford Jr., and this is approximately correct. I'm relating to the theme, but John Ford said that he bought something from the Brand estate, and here I'm giving an example rather than the exact figures because I forgot them. He said, "I bought this for $5,000, and Mrs. Norweb, you can have it because you need it for $5,500. He said, "Fine." Okay, so what happens is a little bit later, Mrs. Norweb is talking to Horace Louis Philip Brand, one of the descendants, and he said, "Oh, I saw John Ford this thing the other day for $2,000, and I probably should offer it to you." So Mrs. Norweb told John Ford in their last, they said, "I don't care if you got it free, but don't tell me the wrong thing. I'm not doing business with you anymore." And she never did. And then another time, I was near her at a convention, and someone came up and said, "Mrs. Norweb, would you," never called her anything but Mrs. Norweb, "would you like to buy this coin for $200 or whatever it was?" And she looked at it and said, "Well, no, I wouldn't." Then she said, "Well, how about 180? So, young man," this other person, "if I wanted to buy it, I'd pay $200. But she had sort of a regal air to her. And but anyway, she was always very nice to me. And when I did the book on Virgil Brand, I called her. She became blind in her older years. I called her, and she was the only person I was ever could talk to in whenever this was, 1985 or 3 or 2 or something, who ever met Virgil Brand. And she had been going to see him, so we interviewed. I quoted something she had to say, and Mrs. Norweb died. And the family called up to me and said, "We want you to sell the collection. Just come and get it. Just do that." And so I had. But before this happened, or what was happening, I was at an A&A convention, and her son was R. Henry Norweb Jr., and her daughter-in-law was Elizabeth Norweb, Libby. So, or maybe this was before we had the collection, but the Norwebs were no longer living. And so I was talking to R. Henry Jr. and Libby in the lobby somewhere at the A&A convention, and some dealer, a competitor, I don't remember who it was, comes up and said, can I have a minute, and so forth. And so I stepped away in courtesy, and the dealer went up, and then R. Henry Jr. said, "Well, the dealer said to me, well, if Mrs. Norweb goes shopping or something," this is Libby, the daughter-in-law, "I'd like to talk to you about the collection." And R. Henry Jr. said, "Oh, that's fine. She's been going. She's gonna go." So anyway, we continued talking, and he thought this was funny, and then he said, "Well, because Libby Norweb's in charge of the collection and everything." But when he comes back, I'll certainly say hi. Anyway, I knew all the Norwebs very well. They were very nice people. If America ever had royalty, it would be the Norweb family. So, and they were not, and when you know whether someone's nice or not, you say, "Were they nice to me?" And the answer was that they were always nice to me. I don't have my watch here, or I thought I had it. So I don't quite know what time it is. I don't want to. Okay. Okay, I don't want to run off and. Oh, here it is. I don't want to get to numismatist number 3 when I have 10 numismatists, so I can always give someone short shrift.
We'll probably stay if you want to keep going.
Oh, no, we don't. We don't want you to do that. Okay. Anyway, Mrs. Norweb was a fine human being. They were great benefactors of numismatics. Her husband was a counselor of the American Numismatic Society. Like many husbands do, or maybe, or wives, more likely wives, she accompanied her spouse to numismatic. He accompanied his spouse to numismatic things, but R. Henry Jr. himself was not a numismatist, but he participated. And they were very fine people, and it was a pleasure to know them. Next. Now we have Abe Kosoff. And Abe Kosoff was born in 1913, I believe, and he was going to become an accountant in 1929. He became a vest pocket coin dealer and liked trading coins, and then along came the Depression. And for somehow or other, buying and selling gold coins, there was always a market in coins during the Depression. He was from New York City, and even though people were maybe selling apples or pencils on the street corner, double eagles and quarter eagles and commemoratives and things were being bought and sold in New York City. And he had a little shop there at the back of a jewelry store, and did a very nice business. And then one day said that, one year said, the heck with it, I don't want to be an accountant. He became a professional numismatist, or declared his professional numismatic status, and had picked up a trade name called the Coin Gallery. And if you read his later ads, it says Coin Gallery 1937. So that must have been the time he had his epiphany, but he was busy before that. I knew Abe. Abe Kosoff lived in California, and he and Abner Kreisberg were partners in Numismatic Gallery. And they were in New York City, and they were probably the largest, well, either Stax or else Numismatic Gallery is the most important in New York City, depending on whether you liked one or the other. It was both of them didn't like each other. Whether you liked one or the other, or a matter of opinion. No one published sales figure, but Numismatic Gallery with Abe Kosoff and Abner Kreisberg was very important in New York City. And then the Stack family, J.B. and Morton, were in New York City also, and they constituted most of the coin business in the United States, except for B. Max Mehl way down in Fort Worth, Texas, who was in the twilight of his life. So these people handled the larger collections. I met Abe Kosoff somewhere or other at a coin convention. He's the one that invited me to dinner with B. Max Mehl, and he liked me, and I liked pattern coins. Now, pattern coins today, and we have Saul Teichman in the front row, who's the research editor, or side row, research editor of Whitman's Jed book. But pattern coins in 1955 and 56, nobody collected them. Nobody had a book. I say nobody. Dealers did not have a book on pattern coins. There was only one, and it had been printed in 1913. They didn't know what they are, but so they would save them for me. I'd come to conventions, and they'd say, "You know what this is? Do you want to buy it?" And of course, they would buy it as part of some other collection, and they didn't have a heck of a lot of value. And although I didn't have too much money, I ran ads. Somebody had the impression that I was a wealthy heir or who knows what, but. When the fruit collection was announced, this was a little early on, late 1953, and I'd only been a dealer for a year, but I'd been buying patterns, including through the mail from James P. Randall, and from Abe Kosoff, and from Saul Kaplan in Cincinnati. So I get a call from Abe Kosoff. "I'm going to the Farouk sale. Can I represent you?" In 1954. I get a call from another person. Gosh, I'm not that important, So anyway, but they went to the Farouk sale. When they came back, I bought a lot of their things. So I had a very active business in patterns for many, many years, long before Dr. Judd, who came out with the revision. Dr. Judd I knew pretty well. He was a Omaha doctor, and he really wasn't a numismatist. He was more of a, and I say that in any way other than to say that he wasn't a technical numismatist. He liked patterns, but he mostly asked Abe Kosoff, like, "What is this?" or "What should I pay?" And he liked people. He would go golfing with other numismatists. A very, very nice person. He was president of the ANA. But his name got us. Abe Kosoff thought a new pattern book should be done, so he said, "Well, why don't we have you be the author and I will write it. So Dr. Judd became the author of the book, but actually Abe Kosoff created the whole thing. And we corresponded on it a little bit. And one of the things that Abe Kosoff and I did is when I was in 1953, 4 or 5, he was in California, and you could go to the banks and you could say, I'd like to have some bags of 1,000 coins of uncirculated dollars. And you go to your bank, and they would call it the Federal Reserve, and they'd say, I need 10 bags of new silver dollars. Send me some. And the Federal Reserve would not, I lived in Philadelphia, wouldn't say, well, do you want 1887p? They would say, well, here's some ones that have never been circulated, and they'd send them, and it would be luck of the draw. So Abe Kosoff said to me, he said, I have customers in California that go to the banks in like LA and get bags, but if you order them in the East, you'll get different dates and different dates. So if I send you a check send a check like $10,000, I will pay you a 15%, 10% I think it was, commission, plus shipping, and you just order them for me. So he would send me all these thousands of dollars, and I would go down to the bank and say, I'd like to order 10,000 silver dollars, I'd like to order 5,000, 10,000, and I would pay for them, and then they would ship them by Railway Express, if you remember that. Put little tags on them and ship them to California, and then he satisfied his California customers. I didn't open the bags, but he was happy with what they were, and so I was his sort of agent. In 1955, when I went to the first ANA convention, my life, was also the first official meeting of the Professional Numismatists Guild. So he sort of patted me on the shoulder and said, Dave, one of these days, or one of these years, I'd like to sponsor you as a member of our guild. This is their first meeting, And so a little later on, a few years later, I became the youngest member of the PNG. The PNG was a complete private club. It was run by Saul Kaplan in Cincinnati and Abe Kosoff, and they ran it just like you might run your own personal business or your own office. I don't think there was any voting or anything, and if they liked you, they would have it. It was strictly a private group of leading dealers, but they'd have a meeting, and they would say, for example, John Smith would like to belong, and someone would say, oh, he's a jerk, he gave me a bad check, or whatever. Oh, well, then we won't have him come. Or they'd say, oh, we should have him member. Okay, we all want him. And then they would tell the person, like, yes, you made it or you didn't make it. I mean, there was nothing like please apply or you had to have a credit rating. So it was a private club. And then in the early 1960s, Abe Kosoff, who is a super people person, said, let's make this where any qualified person can apply and join if the membership votes on him. And Saul Kaplan said, well, you're ruining everything. Everything like, there are any number of organizations like this. The nice thing about the PNG is that we all know each other, and it's sort of like a secret society. And anyway, they broke over that, and Saul Kaplan resigned, and my business partner, Jim Ruddy, then became secretary at no charge. And Abe Kosoff continued the PNG to what it is today. And I could give an hour-long talk on the PNG. It's real many, many interesting anecdotes. But in the early days, it was much different. And Abe Kosoff was pivotal in the formation of the PNG. He was its father. And he also was the father of the ANA grading guide, ANA grading system, and of ANACs for certification. And he mediated many fights between the PNG and the ANA. The PNG there was a time when at the ANA conventions, the ANA would say, well, we have to guarantee the Statler Hotel that we're going to rent the ballroom for the Bourse, and we have spaces for 100 tables, but we don't know if anybody's going to show up. So the PNG say, well, we will block book. We'll book 75 tables, and that way you can just go ahead and make your reservations. And if you don't sell any tables, we'll guarantee it. And that worked out very well for the ANA until about 1961 or 62, until everybody wanted to have an ANA table, and there wasn't enough space. So the ANA said to the PNG, in effect, like, we don't need you anymore, and besides, people were complaining, like, you have PNG Day that steals from the regular ANA show, get rid of PNG. So there's like pro-PNG, anti-PNG, and all sorts of squabbles that lasted for many, many, many years. Today, everyone coexists. So Abe Kosoff passed away, and we handled his collection at auction also. But I have many, many nice memories of Abe, and could go on to the great lengths about him. Okay, next. Okay, this is Louis E. Eliasberg Sr., Louis Eliasberg, and he was, I say good friend. Now, I'm not overdoing it, because you could say, well, he's not a friend, he's just a business acquaintance, and some people were, but I would say that Mrs. Norweb was a good, Mr. Mehl was not even a business acquaintance, he was someone I met Baymax Mehl I met in passing. Everybody Norweb was a friend, and Abe Kosoff was a friend, and I say Louis Eliasberg was a friend in the sense that we went out to dinner, he knew who I was, and asked about my family, if that makes a friendship. But I knew him. He was a respected figure when I first started, and everyone knew of the Eliasberg collection. He had one of everything, and we corresponded. And Louis Eliasberg was not a super technical numismatist in the sense that, like Saul Teichman here is with patterns, saying this weighs 112.6 grains instead of 112.5 grains. So he would never do that. And of course, they didn't have any grading system at that time. But he had like questions on things. So he would call me up and he'd say, "Hi, I'm looking at my 1838 half dollar or something, rare coin. And how many do you think exist? Or what's your opinion? Or what's the value?" He always liked to know values. He kept little index cards. He might say it's 1959, and I wanted to update my values. What do you think a 38.0 is worth? And I might say, well, I think it's worth $3,500, whatever it was worth at the time. Then one day in 1975, fast forward, at the A&A convention in Los Angeles, I got a call, I had a call that Mr. Eliasberg called. I'm here at the A&A convention attending the show. And he said, he didn't know I was at the show, but he said, I'd like to, I called him back and said, I wonder if you could come to Baltimore and spend a week with me going over my collection. And of course, I said, I lived in California at the time, moved around. And I said, oh, I'd be delighted to. And I said, I'll make a reservation, and I will come to see you. And it'll just be an honor, and I'll find a hotel and so forth. And he said, well, no, the owner of the Lord Baltimore Hotel is a friend of mine, so we'll put you up in a suite there. And I said, well, that's nice. And let me know about reimbursement. He said, well, no, you can't pay. And I said, well, why not? And I said, well, I have an airline ticket. And he said, no, I'm going to pay your way. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, because if you pay your way, then I would feel that I owe you something. But if I pay your way completely, then I don't know what's going to happen to my collection. But if I pay your way completely, you've come out to enjoy the collection, and I'm going to treat you nicely, but I don't owe you anything. Do we have that understanding? And I said, yes. So I went out and I spent a very nice week with him. I had lunch with him every day, every night, had dinner with him and his wife, and every day went to his coin vault. And by that time, he started collecting in 1955. He'd say, well, I hear all these coin grades. Do you think this is an MS 65 or a 60, or is this whatever? And can you give me some ideas? Because I used to say a coin is uncirculated, but now people say, well, is it a gem? Is it choice? And so tell me whether it's regular, gem, or choice. So he didn't use the numbers like I do. So I did all that. We had a very nice time. Then a little later, through his two sons, we handled his collection, which of course is a great once-in-a-lifetime thing. He had one of every coin from the 1793 half cent to the 1933 double eagle, although he turned his double eagle in 1952 voluntarily, but he did have one. So he is the only person that ever completed a collection, and no one probably will ever again, because the coins are so widely scattered. Next slide. The next slide shows, this is a very famous picture. There is Louis Eliasberg in the bank vault, where I've been many times, with his collection mounted in plastic holders, mounted in wooden frames and they were on little vertical posts when he exhibited them. Like he exhibited them in the Smithsonian Institution at one time in the Mint, and you could turn panels and look. I'm trying to think, because they keep changing. The Maryland National Bank was the one he was the main stockholder of, and but I'm not going to give you the wrong bank number. You have to look at my name. You have to look in my book, because the bank keeps changing names, but it's still there today, and the vault is there. And anyway, that's Louis Lasberg Sr., and that was a picture used in a magazine.
Wasn't this picture in the Numismatists?
Pardon?
Wasn't this picture this particular?
It could be. It was one of the ones he liked. It actually was in color on the front of, I think, Sunday Magazine supplement at one time. Next. Okay, this is Harry Bass and his wife Doris, and that's Mrs. Bass and Harry. And next slide. We're not finished with Harry, of course. There's Harry. Okay, Harry Bass Jr. was another good friend of mine. I'm good friends with his family also. And Harry was a friend of everybody's. Harry started collecting coins in 1950s, I think it was, when he, this is in a book I wrote about him, when he bought a roll of $quarter Washington quarters from somebody and found that the roll of uncirculated quarters had gone up in value a certain percent, and he wanted to sell it, and he didn't figure out how this could be, and he wanted to learn more about coins. Harry was a super technical person. Here is the first person I mentioned so far today who would be, you could put him in a room with the most scientific numismatists that you could find today, and he would hold his own. He knew about diameters, he knew about weights, he knew about authenticity, he knew about die varieties, he discovered new varieties. And Harry was a very, very successful person. He was in oil, and then he founded Beaver Creek, Colorado. He founded Vail, Colorado, the ski resort. That was his idea, and he did it. If you go to Vail, Colorado today, and they have a plaza and a lot of stores, right in downtown, you'll see a big plaque with Harry Bass on it. And then he founded Vail, which was or Beaver Creek, which is an offshoot of Vail. But his main love was gold coins, and he just saw it as a respite from business. He would have a very hard day with whoever he's having a hard day with in real life, and return to his coin collection and take out a 1796 quarter eagle and study it under glass and notice that one star was recut. He liked to do this, then, because I like die varieties, we corresponded a lot. When he sold the Lasberg sale in 1982, he said, "Can I come out early and look at all the die varieties?" So we put him, when we showed lots, we had a whole row of lot viewers showing lots, and behind the table over in their corner is Harry Bass and his magnifying glass, making notes on all of them. And he was a buyer. He bought the 1870S unique $3 gold piece, for example, there. And one day about 1990 something or other, 1985 or something, he said, "Are you on the internet?" And the internet just started, and I said, "No." And he said, "Well, as of a certain time," and he picked a year, "I'm only going to correspond with people who are on the internet. So if you're not on the internet, you're not going to hear from me. I'm not going to write any more letters." So I said, "Well, I'm not on the internet." So and I wasn't on the internet either. So the deadline came and passed. Okay. So he called me up and he said, "You haven't heard from me for a while, have you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, because you're not on the internet." So I said, "Okay, tell me how I get on the internet." And this is completely, and I said, "Well, here's what you do. You go to, what was it, Prodigy or whatever the internet things were back then. And you go out and you buy a Mac computer, a Mac Plus or something. This is, you went out and you spent I remember spending $4,000, I think it was, for a laser printer or something that printed. Anyway, it cost a lot of money to get involved with like a Mac computer. You didn't have PCs then. It wasn't cheap, and this is like 1996, 7 or whatever it was. So anyway, we corresponded by email, and then he liked us a lot again, and for some reason, shall I say. And when he passed away, his widow Doris and family said, come and sell his collection. And then we did that. We did that in a number of sales and helped them pick things out for the exhibit. It's at A&A. Then on one time, the American Numismatic Society, of which he was a counselor, and I say this with due respect to everybody involved, and the person there isn't anymore because I know that this is being recorded, but they were going to dedicate the Harry Bass Jr. Memorial Library. So Mrs. Bass, Doris, asked if I could come to New York City and accompany her to the ceremony that the American Numismatic Society was going to dedicate. I said, yes, I will. And so we go there, and a lady greets us there, and we're walking along, and it was a lady is no longer there, and we're talking, and we'll go about 100 feet. We're not even up, not too far along in the new building yet. The building used to have. He says, I have you down for like I forgot, $3 million donation for so and so. And Doris Bass said to me, they haven't even offered me a cup of coffee yet. It was the wrong thing to do. Anyway, that wasn't a smart move for the American Numismatic Society. Then Doris Bass said, there's something that we'd like to have you have. And I said, what is it? Well, it's Harry Bass's personal coin cabinet. So I said, okay. So in my office, I have it's in a storeroom, and I use some. There's this coin cabinet that stands about this high, about 7 feet wide, has multiple drawers, all these drawers, and he kept it in his house, and that's where he kept his collection. So we have Harry Bass's coin cabinet, and maybe someday I would donate it to the, I don't know, some worthy society, because it certainly belongs someplace where someone could use it, but I'm not too sure in today's world that people would keep too many coins in them. Okay, next. And there's John Ford. John probably is, I hate to use the the worn-out term arguably, but John, you can ask, what do you think of John Ford? And some people think that he's worthy of sainthood, and others think that he should be in Alcatraz. And there doesn't seem to be any middle division. I happen to be a friend of John Ford's. Since I was a little kid, I've been to his house many times, knew his family, and the Stack family, not me, cataloged his collection for sale, which sold for nearly $60 million. But John had no political finesse. Those of you who know John, and there's some of you that did, if you came up to John and if John said, "Well, I have a Vermont cent, a Vermont copper, and it's a Rider 15." If John said, "I have a Brian says Rider 15," if you've seen a nice one, you said, "Well, what does Rider mean?" He said, "Yeah, there are people like you in coins. They shouldn't be here." Do you have a library? Well, you probably only have a guidebook, one-person library. One of these people, or then if somebody thought a lot of themselves, his favorite term, not to be obscene, is said, "Well, he thinks he excretes ice cream, but he's really a jerk." All these little phrases. But John was a curmudgeon, and I've known him since the early days, been to his house many times, and then in recent times he's been embroiled, or his memory is, in Western bars that are provably fake. Well, for many years, my theory is, and there are many different theories, my theory is that John had his friend Paul Franklin, who could make dies and everything, and also, like numismatics, go out in the West and find some legitimate things. Then I think Paul, now this is speculation, decided to find, Paul would look in a directory and say, here's the San Francisco directory from 1853 by the XYZ Assay Company. And he'd have something made and he'd come and say, "John, look what I found. This is the XYZ Assay Company of San Francisco on this bar." And John would say, "Let me check it," and go, "Hey, they were an assayer in Sacramento. Wonderful discovery, And then I think a little later on, John got a little suspicious, because he asked me to sort of check on some of Franklin's sources. But then John if you ever met anyone, could never be wrong, I mean, if John said this was purple and you said this was really gray, he would never admit that it was gray, okay? He could never be wrong, and not impossible. So I think until his dying day, he defended some of this weird stuff that Franklin did, but I think he was the victim. But other people think that he and Franklin worked as a team, but these things never sold for too much, and so this is a unresolved question. But John had ideas, and one day my wife and I went to visit him in 176 Hendrickson Avenue in Rockville Center, New York, and spent a day with him and his wife Joan. We went out to dinner someplace, and if you went out to dinner with John, he had a little routine. First of all, he would have handy wipes, and he would wipe his hands after he got to the restaurant, because maybe he had touched a door or something, who knows. Then if they brought a menu, he would ask, well, how is this prepared? And maybe even like, could I go look at the kitchen? But this particular instance, we knew where we were going. So at the end of he said, well, you have to have carrot juice. They have carrot juice here, and have you ever had carrot juice? I said, no. So he brings along a little glass of orange carrot juice, okay? And I said, well, I have to get some when I go home. He said, well, you can't buy bottled carrot juice because carrot juice turns brown after one day or something. So there's no such thing, but you can get a carrot juice extractor, a little centrifuge and stuff, and here's where to get one. So I order for $200 a carrot juice centrifuge extractor. It's sent to my house, and you put in carrots, it grinds them up, but the only thing is it takes about 20 minutes to clean all this fine mesh. So I used it about once, but there are many, and then John, he liked to have a deal. So he learned that there was a book published on, for example, Indian treaties of someplace or other, and that some university press published it, and it was $50. So he would call me up and say, well, I need to have half a dozen people buy it. Will you buy one? Okay. Will you buy one? Okay, you buy one. And then he would order them wholesale. But I mean, so instead of paying $50, he'd pay $36. And then he'd have to ship out. But he would actually do that. And then when he got a catalog from us, which he had to have 2 copies. One had to be sent between cardboard and so it wouldn't be dinged up or anything, and the other was his working copy. And I don't know whatever happened to all the perfect copies, but he had 2 copies of everything. But John was a fine friend, and we had many stories. Walter Breen and John disliked each other. Walter Breen used to work for John, but Walter didn't like authority. So John, because he was sort of like a student might not like a teacher, so whatever John did, Walter didn't like. And Walter lived sort of what you might call a bohemian life, whereas John was immaculate in his personal hygiene and what he ate and everything. So they're opposite. But on the other hand, Walter was an icon. He was essential for writing catalogs. And if you went to a convention, people come, Walter, what is this? What is that? You know, and so they had a very unusual relationship. I knew both of them. I wrote Walter's obituary for the Numismatists, but they never got along, and here again there are many stories. I'm sort of running out of time, so I'll conclude with my last slide, which belies the name of this presentation, and that's Virgil Brand. I'd never met him, but if you asked me, there was one of the Numismatists I would like to meet, I'd like to have met, it would probably be Virgil Brand, or it could have been Henry Chapman, or actually, who I really like would be James Ross Snowden, at the men who made all these things. But there's a good example. The greatest formed the greatest collection ever put together by any private individual in the world, and we handled a lot of that. And I never met Virgil. So this is the next to the last slide. So we'll have the last slide, please. This is our graphics department. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Tom.
Yeah. Of all the famous auctions you handled, which one did you enjoy most?
Probably well, I don't know. It's hard to say. You know, it's like which of your kids do you like best or something. Probably the Garrett collection from Johns Hopkins. I didn't even mention Garrett because the Garrett collection started formed in 1864 or 5. And it was almost like a time capsule, and there were things in it that hadn't been seen, or if they had been seen, they'd been not numismatically looked at properly, and dealing with Johns Hopkins and the university and so forth. They had 4 companies come and give a presentation. They had myself, which was Bowers and Brennan Gowers at the time. They had Stax in New York, they had Christie's, and they had Sotheby's. So I went there and gave a. We came in Garland Hall, which is where the provost, Dr. Zadanis, had his office, and we were to meet at like 10 o'clock in the morning and be scheduled a presentation. So Christie's hired John Ford because they didn't know much about coins. Someday I'll have to tell about the time that I was Christie's coin department, but that's not for today. They had John Ford. The Stax had Norman Stack, and they had John Burnham, who had been curator of the Yale collection. They had me, and for Sotheby's, they might have, I don't know who they had. So it's in the morning, and we're supposed to meet there, and I go to say, "Hi, John. How are you, John Ford?" And then hi to Norman Stack, and the assistant who's supposed to meet us, "Hey, you're not supposed to talk to each other." And I said, "Well, I know each other." "Well, this is a competitive thing." So they had a little council. "Well, we're going to put you each. This is all true. We're going to put you each in a separate room." So I was led off with whoever was helping me to room so and so to sit there until called for, and the Stacks were in room so and so. So I was called for and gave my presentation to the board of trustees. Okay. And so did everybody else. Then we all retired. Then they went back to our little cells. Got a little knock on the door from Stephen Muller, who's president of Johns Hopkins, and says, "Dave, or Mr. Bowers, whatever he called me, you have been selected, and so can you come up and talk to the trustees again?" So I go up, and there's these trustees. There are all these formal people with Johns Hopkins University and medical school, you name it, And here I am, just a little coin dealer, probably with no PhD or anything. But anyway, so Stephen Muller says, "Now you probably want to know why we picked you, because you are the most your presentation, your fee was more than anyone else's, but we picked it for one reason." And I said, "Why?" "Well, because you would give it some P.T. Barnum." And I said, "Well, I suppose we could." And he said, "Well, everybody else was giving a scientific presentation, and we're interested in marketing." And I said, "Oh, great." Then they said, "Well, you say the collection had been appraised, I think, $8.9 million. You say it's worth more than that, and and we like to believe you, but it's been well appraised by one of the people who is one of your competitors at 8.9. You tell us it's worth significantly more than that. As part of your presentation, we can understand that. But what we're going to do is give you an incentive. You propose so and so. But if the collection brings up to $12 million, you get that. But if it brings from 12 to 14, you get this. Bring 14 to 16, you get this, and so forth." I said, "Well, that's okay." Anyway, the collection brought $25 million. So Johns Hopkins paid us a little more money than they ever even needed to. Then I put out a book called The History of U.S. Coinage, so they said, "We want to write a book." So I talked to the Johns Hopkins University Press, which is a scholastic place, and they reviewed this with the people signing the coin and said, "Well, we are publishers. We publish books on many subjects, medicine, history, whatever." And we reviewed this, and we figured that in 10 years we'll be able to sell 1,000 copies, and we don't think this is because of the expense. And so I said, "Well, why don't we publish it? We'll publish it. We'll just put the university seal on the front of it, and we'll do it anyway." We printed a print run of 4,000 copies, which was sold out when we put a notice in Coin World or somewhere like you can order now, and they're all gone. So even before the sale did, we had today, like 25,000 or more of those copies have been sold. Anyway, it was one of the nicest experiences I've ever had with Johns Hopkins and with everybody involved. Any other question? Yes?
The brand collection, was it well organized when it was sold, or was it more of a hoard?
Well, the Brand collection started being sold after Virgil Brand died in 1926. In the 1930s, first of all, they cashed in double eagles and silver and gold and paper money in packets and things. A lot was just cashed in at face value. They started liquidating it in the 1930s, and by the time we got part of it, a lot of it had already been sold privately, some in different auctions. But what was left was stuff, material that either no one knew what to catalog or whatever. There were patterns, there were Indian peace medals, encased postage stamps, weird things. I mean, I use the word weird now because today in 209 you'd say, I know what an encased postage stamp is. I know what a Washington peace medal is, but you remember, this is when the people weren't sophisticated back then. So they said, we have all this stuff. We don't have any 1804 dollars, but we have all these other things, colonial coins. And so we got to handle all of those.
Was it like buckets full, or
Part-
was it well organized?
There was a lot of it, yes. There was, they had what they called gorilla boxes, because they took an 800-pound gorilla to move them. These are wooden crates that were 4 feet on the side, that were metal strapped, that were from some bank vault in Chicago or someplace, and then sent to the Morgan Guaranty Trust in New York, and then opened in the presence of 27 people or something, But it was a hodgepodge. I mean, there's some stuff there that really wasn't worth much at all. But it was all intact. I mean, it was all in Virgil Brand's envelopes. There were cigar boxes. We put his stuff in cigar boxes, all sorts of cigar boxes. It was interesting. Anyone else? Yes.
When did you actually start as a coin dealer?
I started collecting in 1952. In 1953, my father, we were from a very modest family in 44 Pennsylvania, so my father said, "You like coins? You better find out some way to afford to collect them." So I was a great reader. I read voraciously. I didn't have much money to buy coins. I looked through Lincoln Cents with the Whitman folder. I thought I'd find the 1990s EDB in the first afternoon of looking, but I never did find one. So then I started running ads in the local paper and taking the bus line to visit people, because I wasn't old enough to have a driver's license. I was only 14 years old or something. And I'd visit people and buy Indian cents. I once visited somebody who had a drugstore and said the previous owner saved 2-cent pieces and had a whole cigar box full of them. And so I took along a blue book of U.S. coins, that, 2-cent pieces, the dealers pay 22 cents for, okay, I'll buy them for 22 cents. And so I did this, and I would take them to the coin club and sell them. Then I asked my father if I could have a loan to build an inventory, and he said, well, he could loan me $6,000, a lot of money back then, and he would do it interest-free. I mean, just loan it. And I said, no, I want to pay interest. He said, why? Because I really want to do this on my own. My father was never a collector, so I called the bank, and whatever their interest rate was, I paid that, and so I had $6,000 to build an inventory. Well, this was when a 1990s VDB would retail and gem uncirculated for $20. And an 1885 CC dollar would be $2. So you could get an awful lot of inventory. It's probably like saying, here's a loan for $300,000 today or $400,000. And then I just kept trading and back and forth, and built that up to inventory, then paid him back. But my first, I credit 1953 as when I started being a dealer. But here I was a high school student. So like I said at the beginning of the talk, I say that I was a vest pocket dealer. I actually went to Penn State in 1956 and graduated in '60. So I didn't take a shortcut to be a coin dealer. I could have. Bill Gates decided to do that for Microsoft, I hear, but I didn't do that. Anyone else? Yes.
When did you start Patterns? You said your first
Patterns, about 1952, when one of the first books I bought, I just loved patterns, and I said, well, gosh, why doesn't anyone know about patterns? Well, no one did, and I said, well, this is amazing. You can buy, I bought a 1858 Indian head cent, which is a pattern coin, Jed, or AW 264. I used to memorize all these numbers. Saul, do you know these numbers, AW 264?
Probably 208 or
Yeah, 208, right. So I bought my first one for $5, because people wouldn't know what they get a pattern, like they get an 1863 quarter with "In God We Trust" on the back, which isn't right, And they say, well, regular proof is worth $12, Would you buy this one? It's not a regular proof. Oh, okay, I'll do that, And but then, to be fair, there weren't many people buying patterns either. So when I bought I became known as a person who would go look for patterns at coin conventions and then sell them to people who were collecting patterns, including Dr. Judd. And that was a very nice business. Anyone else? Yes?
What projects are you working on right now? Any books? Or?
I just finished, the Whitman book was just published on paper money, which came out, I saw my first copy this Monday. I did a book on half cents and large cents. It's all done. by die varieties and illustrating die varieties up to all the half-cent die varieties and the large cents up to 1814 and then types after that, which is done and will be published by Whitman. And we're doing a series of books on obsolete paper money. And so I was in the Smithsonian earlier this week, and I have two people down there as we speak, looking over their paper money. It's never been cataloged, so they're scanning all their paper money, their obsolete paper money, and part of our arrangement is when we bring it back, we're going back in November too. They have thousands and thousands of obsolete notes. We're going to attribute them by bank and everything, and then we're going to add, they have accession numbers. This is accession 1943.4-23. So we're going to add that to the numbers, and then if someone contacts the Smithsonian and says, what do you have in paper money from Goodspeed's Landing, Connecticut, they'll be able to say, well, we have these 8 images. And we're doing this, it's quid pro quo in that the Anderson Press, Whitman, will get pictures it needs for the book, but the National Coin Collection will also have its things cataloged for the first time. It's never been done. It's not, no one's looked at it. So it's been a pleasure to do that, because you don't know what they have and all sorts of interesting things.
I thought Richard Doty had been doing that for several years.
Well, Dick Doty is a good friend of mine. Actually has scanned a number of pictures of interesting vignettes. He actually put out, and you can buy on the Book on Demand, he sold 26 copies of a book of vignettes, and he's very interested in this project, but he has never cataloged the collection and never examined all in it. He has made selective things looking for vignettes, but he's the one sponsoring all this.
Yeah, I thought it was in the process of cataloging. That's what.
Well, I mean, everything's in the process. Like, we'll do it sometime, but there is, as of last Sunday when we started on Monday, there is no organized methodology or anyone working on cataloging it. It's
Will
there.
that replace Haxby or
Yeah, just
not?
those.
Well, Haxby is a wonderful reference, and we may incorporate that if Mr. Haxby would like to work with this project, but Mr. Haxby, which is a wonderful set of books put out in 1988, he's not quite sure whether he owns the rights, whether Krause Publications own the right,